So this is the next part that we're going to be doing, and it's the neck band. And this is the seam allowance that I told you had to press outwards toward the band, and that's because eventually that's going to be encased with inside of this. So this is your wrong side of your fabric and your right side of the fabric. If you need to measure this, you can. I'm not going to. I'm going to eyeball mine because that's what I did with the first yukata I made, and it was fine. It looks really good when I got done. So you're going to take this halfway in on itself, and you're just going to press that throughout the entire band. So go ahead and just take your iron and start pressing this down halfway, and that's wrong sides together. Do that throughout the whole band and then come back. Now for the next part, we're going to be continuing with our neck band, and we're going to be putting right sides together. So that's this part right here. And basically you already turned in the top of your neck band here halfway and you pressed it. So now what you have to do is turn this back to the right side. So there's what you pressed, and then you're doing right sides together like this. And you're not doing that throughout. I just did that to show you where it is. You're going to be doing that at the end. So this is the end of one side of my neck band, and obviously I have two of those. So I will be folding this right side on top of this other right side. Now you can follow the pattern specifically if you need to. What you're basically going to be doing now that you've put these right sides together, see where my yukata starts to branch out here? This is all just extra fabric that you just have left over in the design. So you're going to sew these together basically at the point here where this starts to branch out. You're just going to sew straight across here, and you're going to trim that out. And once you've trimmed that out, all of this will be getting flipped. Make sense? So once again, this is what I pressed. I'm turning it in on itself like this, not over the seam, but to the seam, going down here to my point. I'm going to stitch from there to there, back stitch, and then I'm going to flip that in. So do that next and come back. I just wanted to show you what mine looks like. So this is the excess that I have after stitching my right sides together, and I'm just going to trim all of that out. Be careful. And I'm going to trim this out. I'll cut a little bit closer here to the corner so that I can get a nice shape on my corner. The other side of my neck band, I didn't really need that much. Yes, so I'm just going to trim off a little bit here. Once again, getting a little bit closer there at the corner, just so it's nice and clean. Okay, and then you will flip it in. So flipping in my corner here, and then the other end of my neck band is right here, and flip that in as well. If your corner doesn't look nice and square like that, then it means you need to trim a little bit more here. Try pressing on it first before you go cutting like crazy. There you go. So the reason that you built that overband and the neck band is so that you would have this kind of thicker, stiffer collar. So now you're just going to fold over your neck band to the inside, and you're going to hand stitch all of that down. Now that we've finished the neck band, we'll be moving on to the sleeve. So your sleeve will be different depending on if you're doing the male or the female. I'm doing the male, so I'm going to be looking for these two circles, whereas if you're doing the female version, you'll be looking for these stars. So this is my sleeve, and I have already marked where my dots are on each end, and now I'm just going to press this in a fourth, which is about halfway to the dot. Just going to press that really quickly, and you're only doing it in between the dots or the stars. You don't need to do any more than that. Okay. So that's nice and pressed flat, and then I'm going to turn that in again and press it again. So 1/4 over 1/4. And once again, you can measure these if you need to. I feel comfortable just pressing mine. This is my kimono laid out. This is the back, this is the front. And as I said before, you'll finish the hand stitching on the neck here. So I folded my neck to the inside and then I hand stitched all of this down. And then we also had to turn in one side of the sleeve 1/4 and then another 1/4 just in between the large dots or the small dots, depending on if you did the male or female sleeve, and I've hand stitched that down. The next thing is marking up your sleeve. I cut right on the selvage here, so I didn't have notches, so I used my pattern to remark where my notches are, and I just matched up my notches. And because I added length to both of my pieces, I also measured from the end of the sleeve to the end of the hem, and I did that on the front and the back just to make sure that I had the correct spacing on where my sleeve is supposed to be. So that's the next thing you're going to do. Pin your sleeve to your kimono. The rounded edges should be towards the inside, so you'll do that here, and then you'll do that on the other side. Keep in mind before you stitch this sleeve together that you will not be stitching this entire seam. You're just going to be stitching from your large dot or your small dot. You're using the large dot for the men's size and the small dot for the women's size. So I'm going to be stitching from one large dot to the other large dot and then back stitching, and then you'll be done with the seam. So you should have some loose selvage over here whenever you're done. Okay, so now I'm going to show you one of the kimono sleeves. I have them both pinned. I'll just show you the one on this side. This is where my large dot would be, and then where my notches would be, and then my other large dot's down here. So I'm just going to stitch in between there with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Of course, feel free to pin this more if you need. I'm using cotton, so my pieces are pretty much staying relatively where they need to be. Okay, so I'm going to do that for the other sleeve now, and then I'm going to press these open and then press them back together so that it'll be easier to stitch later. Once you finish sewing the sleeve to the body, you'll be folding the sleeve in over itself, and then you'll be stitching that closed. And once again, this will be different for male and female. So I'm doing the male one. So underneath where I did my 1/4 hand stitch hem there, I have a large dot and I'm sewing all through here to close that up, and then all the way back up into the seam. So I will not have any space left open here, whereas the female version does. So just be careful of that when you're sewing the sleeve closed. Another thing to note if you're doing the male version, when you get up here to the underarm, be sure that the selvages from this piece you push outward, because you're going to be closing all of that up. But if you're not careful when you stitch in there, you could make an unattractive stitch if you grab some of the fabric from the selvage in this piece. If you don't understand that, go to pin your sleeve together and look there when you get to that part, and you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So now I'm stitching one of my sleeves closed. I'm just going to start where I marked So this would be my first dot. Do a little back stitch there. Okay, the corner's a little trickier, just be careful. Go as slow as you need to. If you feel like your fabric starts to pull, just lift the foot up a little bit and give it a second. Now you're going to make a sharp corner here. I usually like to back stitch just a hair in those corners. Okay. And as you get closer, if you're doing the men's underarm, I should say, be careful that you grab this fabric under here. I pinned mine twice because I wanted to make sure I didn't grab anything that I wasn't supposed to. And back stitch a little. And take it out and look at it. I would check your rounded corner here, so I'm pretty happy with that shape. That looks pretty nice. And then check here to make sure that you didn't grab anything strange. I didn't grab anything I wasn't supposed to. Nope, that's fine. Alright, now I'm going to try to press this open as best as I can without making any weird lines here. And then I would recommend that you do the same thing, and then join me again. Now comes the part where you finally get to start sewing the sides of your kimono together, and it actually kind of starts to look like something rather than a large blob of interesting fabric. So that up there is my sleeve, and I've already pinned this all the way down. So it's my very long kimono because I'm making it for a very tall man. Okay, so since this is the male version, I've pinned all the way up to the large circle underneath the arm, the sleeve up there. The women's will have a small opening there and they have a different mark for that. So just make sure that you note that for your own design before you start. I'm now going to stitch all of this together, and I will do that for both sides, and then I will press both of those seams open. So to make my seam look nicer, I've started basically underneath the underarm right where I backstitched whenever I was doing the sleeve, and I'm trying to get as close to that as I can without getting right on top of it. Because if you get right on top of it, it's going to be bulky and it's not going to lay well and it's not going to look nice. So I'm just going to stitch right there, backstitch just a little bit, and then I'll start tapering to my actual seam. Keep in mind for this piece too, because I don't think I said it earlier, when you're pinning these together, your sizes could be different. So luckily for me, because of the men's size that I'm doing, all of my seams have basically been selvage to selvage, but that's usually not the case for most of these seams. Oh, goodbye pin. Make sure to keep giving your piece room to breathe here. You're starting to work with a very large piece of fabric, so you may need to move things around as you go. If you're wondering why I'm holding mine down on the sides, it's because I have a little bit of elastine in this material, so I'm trying to keep it from stretching any more than it already has, just from me working with it. If you're working with 100% cotton, this should be a little bit easier for you. Okay, give my piece some room to breathe. Make sure you check your bobbins before you go sewing these mammoth pieces. I've already refilled mine twice, and I'm thinking I might have to do it a third time. Stitch my seam here. Now I'm going to go press this open, and I'll do the exact same thing for the other side. So here's my mostly finished product. There's the top, and then I still have to hem the bottom, but I am going to wait and do that once I fly to LA and I am with the person I'm gifting it to, so that I can make it the length that he prefers. The only other thing that I have to do, other than hemming of course, this shoulder and side seam that we just did, I'm basically going to fold that in, just like I did all the other seams. I'm going to turn that in, and then I'm going to blind stitch both of those and over here as well. So that is what I have left to do other than hemming, and that is going to take me, I would say, at least a few hours. But I am very happy with it, happy with the finished product. I hope you guys try this out and that you like it too. Like I said, this is my second one now. My first one in the male pattern, but I have one of the female ones too, and I really love this kimono pattern. One other thing I just realized I forgot to mention. On the inside of the sleeve here, you can see how mine's laying flat now. If yours isn't laying flat, then you just need to go in there and clip a little bit. So I took my scissors here on the inside and I just clipped the seam just a little bit right here and a little bit right there, and then mine laid perfectly flat. Okay, guys, let me know if you try this out. Let me know if you like the pattern or not. If there wasn't anything that was clear in the sew along, feel free to let me know. Like I said before, I'm still learning how to do this, so if there's something that you need help with, please let me know and I'll try to answer your questions as best as I can. I'm really happy with my sort of bizarre choice of fabric here. It looks even more interesting than when I selected it and it was just in its flat piece. It looks more neat now that it's sewn in all these different lines, even more abstract. So if you enjoyed this so long, please subscribe, please come back, and if you have certain things that you would like to see sewn, I do try to stick mainly to patterns, so If you have a Simplicity, Vogue, or McCall's pattern or Folkwear, please let me know, and if I have it, I will mock one up for you. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you again next time on The Life Kawaii.